So this is from the Ultimate Guide. It's the Ultimate Guide to Creating 3D Characters in 2025, and it's from the. Hold on, what's it? What's the name of the channel? I'll leave a link. I'll put a link here in the. For anyone who wants to watch it, link in the chat there, and then if you're watching the VOD, it'll be in the description.
Is character modeling impossible to learn? No, definitely not.
For sure.
If you're looking to get into character design, you're probably hearing terms like hyperrealism, hair particles, ray tracing, subsurface scattering, muscle simulations, and all that stuff.
So the reason why I wanted to watch this is because I feel like this will be pretty educational for maybe anyone who wants to get into 3D character modeling. So because I not only do I do 2D art, but I do 3D art as well. I have streamed myself do 3D art. The reason why I don't do it very often is there's multiple reasons, but the main reason why is because it takes a really long time. There is a lot to the process. Even if you go back, and actually I don't think it came back anymore. It's how far back it was. But honestly, it took me a month worth of streams. Like I've literally dedicated at least most of the streams during like 1 month to modeling out Spider-Girl. And even then, I think there's a lot of time. Yeah, there's a lot of the work I did was outside of stream as well. Because I just know that if I had just waited and did it only on stream, it would probably take me 2 months to get done. But because I didn't want to spend forever on it, I wanted to move on. I didn't want to just spend 2 months worth of streams just focus on me just doing small bits of a 3D character. So, anyways, continuing on. Yeah, so I'm a 3D modeler, and or 3D, I'm a 3D artist, so I've done 3D art. I've been doing 3D art for years, so.
It is complicated.
But, I mean, I have my own game, if that says anything, so. And 3D.
But the truth is, when you boil it down, anyone can get started creating 3D characters. And in this video, we are going to explain the entire character creation process and take a look at some of the cool technology behind some of your favorite characters. This is going to be a fun video. This entire video was inspired by our brand new character creation course, the Character Artist Handbook, which is now officially live. In the course, you're going to learn how to create your first 3D game character with incredibly simple and easy to understand lessons. So get your notebooks out and keep those beautiful peepers facing the front of the screen because class is in session. Welcome to the next episode of Stylized Station. So let's get right into 3D modeling. When 3D modeling a character, you have to remember, whoa, hang on. Hey. Artists don't just jump right into modeling a character. That's a recipe for disaster.
He's right, honestly. I'd say he's right. I'm trying to remember when I first started. I don't think we just jumped right in. I'm pretty sure it was like, and this is like, so I started doing 3D modeling in high school. I went to a trade school for high school kids. I got lucky. And yeah, I'm trying to remember. I don't think we really jumped in. I think the first few weeks was just kind of, it's more like book work, if anything, more just like, that's what it was. It was more of like learning the tool. It was like we spent some time learning at 3ds Max. Is what we got taught on back then. This was late 2000s. So, yeah. Trying to think. He's using Blender here. That's what I use now, actually. I use Blender. I don't use 3ds Max because it costs too much money for me. So, anyways, continuing on.
Before you hop into any software, I want to show you the beautiful world of the concepting phase is the first step in bringing a character to life. And it's easily one of the most exciting parts of the entire process. It's where you get.
So I will say that he probably won't go too much in depth. If he does, great. But if he doesn't, if you want to actually get in depth into custom the character, I actually did do a video up on the YouTubes. If anyone, I'll do it this way. If anyone in the chat that wants that, let me know. I'll post it. But if you're watching the VOD, it should be. I'll make sure it's in the description.
To be completely free, exploring ideas, styles, and references that are going to inspire your character. This is the part where anything goes. Wild costume designs, exaggerated body proportions, or even unique weapon ideas. You can dream up the most fantastical characters, knowing that changes and refinements are going to come later. This is where the spirit of a character is born. Remember that. But you're probably wondering, okay, how do we actually do this concepting thing? Tools like PureRef make this process easier by allowing you to organize your references into mood boards. Artists pull references from a broad range of sources, not just other characters. Historical clothing, animals, or architecture to inspire their design. The goal is to create a strong foundation, focusing on shapes, colors, and textures that will define your character's look. To create strong character design, focus on key principles like silhouettes and color palettes.
Now, we'll also say that this is for if you're trying to create your own character, or and I guess in terms of like doing fan art, let's say you want to do a 3D model of like Pikachu, or you want to do a 3D model of Rebecca, sure. I would say that you don't necessarily need to do this step, because it's like you're at the end of the day, you're, like you said, you're trying to pull from reference. So your reference, just like me, I pulled reference from online. So you don't really need to, spend the time to draw up something, especially if you're not into drawing or something like that. I do know that when I was an ad break, I'll just do a quick recap, but I do know that like you, as long as you're able to get a good amount of stills, I would say, like, get a front and back, especially because you're doing a 3D model, so it's like you're doing the whole entire character, not just the front, right? So I would say to try and get some image, like for me, like if I was to say to do Rebecca, I would make sure that I get a good, get some good side view and front and back. Now if you can find like a model sheet, sure. If you can draw a model sheet, I would definitely say go for that. Sometimes you'll be able to find a model sheet. It's not very likely, but yeah, I would say at the end of the day, you don't need to straight up like, oh, I have to spend some time drawing up a character sheet and stuff like that, and to get right. You don't necessarily need to do that. Like I said, you can just find some reference online. If you're trying to do like a fan art or something like that. If you do your own character, yeah, you might want to spend some time doing drawing up a character sheet, just like he's saying here. Anyone on?
Start with basic shapes that convey the character's personality, like rounded shapes for friendly characters and sharp shapes for more dangerous ones. And keep the design simple but distinctive. Mix and match references creatively, but do not overcomplicate the design. Remember, simplicity and clarity will make your character stand out.
Yes.
But this is where beginners start to get scared. Going from a concept to this must seem super daunting. But don't worry, artists have a simple and really well-known technique that makes things 100 times easier. Let's talk about blocking. Blocking is the first step in the 3D modeling process.
I would say he's right, and it's also for drawing. Like I'm doing blocking right now. I'm blocking out where my where all my outside lines are going to be, as at the same time also blocking out where like internal lines are going to be as well. Kind of not going too far into detail just yet, but when I go, I will go back and add detail as much as I can. But right now I'm just kind of blocking everything out per the pose that I have set up here. But yes, blocking is, I would say, just in any art, blocking is like the first step in getting your art piece done, whether it be 2D, 3D, whatever.
Where you build out the most important shapes using basic geometry, also known as primitives. I'm oversimplifying things a bit, but imagine starting with a sphere for the head, cylinders for the arms and legs, and a big box for the torso. The purpose isn't to make the model look polished or detailed yet. It's all about nailing the proportions and getting the overall form right before you dive into the more detailed work. It may seem basic, but this is a crucial step that sets the foundation for the entire character. Blocking allows you to focus on the structure and silhouette of the character before getting bogged down in the details.
No, I will say that the way that he's doing it is the more common way of doing it nowadays. When I was being taught, we didn't do it this way. I did it what's called box modeling. Honestly, I never even touched sculpting, like 3D sculpting, until like years later. So all my early models and everything were all done through box modeling, which is essentially like you start with a box or a sphere, depending on like what the character is, and then you just shape it. And I was using a mouse. I didn't even use that. I didn't have access to this. So so actually the spider girl, the Anya spider girl that I did was actually the first character I did in with this sorry, I lost your train of thought. With this style of like doing models and stuff, like starting off with just like you're starting off in the sculpting, and you're just kind of taking like these oval like shapes, and you're just shaping out, or blocking out the character like that. That was the first time that I did it that way. So, and it definitely is easier, especially now since like I have a drawing monitor, so I can sculpt with pen rather than with mouse. Which is also something I had to deal with for a long time too, because I didn't have access to this, and when I did sculpt, because sculpting would be like later, I would do box modeling to get like the overall like the low poly version, and then I would sculpt to get the high poly, and then I would and this is something I was taught by multiple artists as well, like multiple teachers, not just in the school the school that I went to. Actually, no, the school I went to, I don't think we even touched sculpting. I'm not sure, but I just know that like when you did sculpting, it was just to get like a high poly version, which is essentially meaning like a higher detail version, and then you would use lower poly, the low poly or the low detail version to start to get the high poly, and then you would actually what's called projecting. You would project that the high detail onto the low poly, so which that way the low poly looks like the high poly without it being high poly. I don't know if that's still used nowadays, but I'm still learning the new stuff, because the stuff have changed in the time that I had kind of like modeling took like a back seat for me, because like I said, doing modeling takes a long time, but it was that plus it's like I was a lot of times where I just like, I don't feel like doing another 3D model, and so what did I do? I focused more on my 2D stuff, because I want to make my 2D art better, and that's why I've been doing a lot of 2D art. One reason why is because I'm trying to get better, and two is because that I can get done quicker. So yeah, anyways, continue with the video.
Blocking helps answer questions like, how tall should the character be? How broad should the shoulders look? Where do the limbs sit on the body? Getting these answers right early on can save you a ton of time later, preventing any proportion mishaps that may be difficult to fix once you've added details. The beautiful thing is, this technique works for just about anything. If you want to get a start on your character's clothing, just block out the shapes first. You don't need to be a professional modeler. Just get the basic shape down and you can refine it later. This blocking technique is used all over your favorite games. It's how environment designers get started on building massive cities. It's how texture artists create complex materials. Animators even have a blockout phase where they create a rough draft of the movement's appearance. What makes this phase so powerful is the iterative refinement. Blocking allows for flexibility. You can always go back and adjust proportions or the pose as your design evolves. It's a phase that adapts to changes and helps you keep your design balanced. But most importantly for character design, blocking serves a crucial purpose. It helps set the foundation for what is arguably the most important phase of the process, a process called sculpting. 3D sculpting is the process of shaping a digital object, like a character, almost exactly like you would with clay in the real world. Unlike traditional 3D modeling, which uses polygons and edges to define shapes, sculpting allows for more fluid, organic forms. There are many types of 3D art, but character sculpting is special because it gives you the freedom to design lifelike or stylized characters with as much detail as you want. Now, you might be wondering, what do I need to get started? First, you'll need 3D sculpting software. Some popular options include Blender, a free, powerful tool that's perfect for beginners and pros alike.
So this is what I use currently. I originally started with ZBrush. ZBrush, another one, he's probably going to mention it. But ZBrush was actually the first sculpting program that I used. And then, again, it had to do with money. I was, very tight on money after college. So I was like, I just couldn't use ZBrush, unfortunately. So, I didn't do a lot of, I don't think I did a lot of sculpting for a minute, I don't think. And then I switched over to Blender, because I also couldn't afford 3ds Max. I switched over to Blender, and Blender is great because it's free. When it's open source, whatever, you can make changes if you want that to do that. I don't do that, but it's great because you can, it has a sculpt in, it has the model and the texture, and it has pretty much everything for a base. However, there's one thing that it does do, which is like texture painting, which I don't use. I don't like the texture paint in Blender, so I actually opt to use the one that I don't like using because it's from Adobe, but Substance Painter I just think is the best one, honestly, of all the texture painting software. I'm trying to see if there's alternates, but it seems like there was alternates that I know of. It seems some of them are stopped. Their support for those are dwindling, and so I'm like, fuck, man. Damn it. So I think I might also just be stuck with Substance Painter, as much as I hate that I have to pay money to Adobe. That for reasons I'm not going to get into because I've explained that before, but it's essentially just has to do with their whole AI, their whole business model. I don't like their business model. So, and I was all about Substance Painter. What was I trying to say is I started Substance Painter before it got bought out by Adobe, so that's why I'm like so like stuck with it, because I'm like, that's what I've been using forever. Anyways.
You could also look into ZBrush. It's an industry standard software used by professionals in film and game development. It's more advanced, but it's great once you got the basics down. Both of these programs come with tools that mimic traditional sculpting techniques like pushing, pulling, pinching, and smoothing. It's got pretty much everything you'll need. In sculpting, you'll mostly use brushes. These are digital tools that manipulate the surface of your model. Brushes like clay buildup or smooth are your go-to for forming the basic shapes and refining details of your character. But don't worry about learning every tool right away. Start simple, and as you get more comfortable, you can explore more advanced techniques. And sculpting may seem scary to start, but now that the blockout phase is done, you're already well on your way. The basic idea is that you're going to start with simple shapes and then gradually improve and polish your model. You don't need to worry about perfection early on. The beauty of sculpting is that it allows you to build up your details over time. I'm going to walk you through these steps in a little more detail. Your blockout's already completed, so the next step is refining the silhouette, which is the outer shape of your model. This is where you'll start adjusting the anatomy, enhancing the proportions, and defining the major landmarks on your character's body. Think about broad muscle groups, the curve of the spine, or the shape of the limbs. You're still focusing on big picture elements here, so don't worry about the tiny details just yet. Just relax and have fun. Once the silhouette looks solid, it's time to start refining key areas. You'll give special attention to places like the face, the hands, and clothing folds, areas that naturally draw attention and require a little more precision. At this stage, you'll be refining facial features, shaping muscles, and making sure your character reads well from all angles. And now here comes my favorite part, adding the small details, which is really going to make your character pop. This is where you'll sculpt things like skin textures, fabric wrinkles, and any other subtle elements that give your model life and realism. You can use more detailed brushes for these finer touches, but remember, the big shapes always come first. The details should complement, not overwhelm, the overall form. By following these steps, over time you'll go from a rough blockout to a more detailed, polished sculpt. The key is to take it one step at a time. Refine the large shapes, then work your way down to the finer details. And remember, it's okay if things don't look perfect immediately. Sculpting is a gradual process of improvement. Now that you have a surface level idea of how sculpting works, let's talk about the kind of characters you might want to create. If you're watching this video, it means you're probably a beginner. So maybe think about starting with stylized characters. They can be more forgiving because you have more creative freedom to exaggerate proportions or simplify details.
I agree with this, because again, like everything you said, it's stylized, so it's like you can get away with having crappy proportions and stuff like that. You know, and it's like you can work on that, you know, and it's like if it's wrong, you don't have to feel as bad because, well, it's a cartoon character. Okay. You're right. So, yeah, no, he's right on that. For sure, I agree.
For example, stylized characters can have bigger heads, larger eyes, and simplified body forms, similar to anime or cartoon characters. These tend to be easier to sculpt because they don't require perfect anatomy or intricate details. Realistic characters, on the other hand, require a deeper understanding of human anatomy. You'll need to pay close attention to proportions, muscles, and the way the skin behaves. But remember, both styles are valid, and many artists blend the two together. Here's the truth. Sculpting is a skill, and it takes practice. Don't be discouraged if your first sculpts don't turn out exactly as you envisioned. Each sculpt you create will help you learn something new, whether it's understanding form, anatomy, or how light interacts with the surface. Remember, start small. Practice creating simple objects like a head, a hand, or even a cartoon character. As you get more comfortable, move on to more complex projects. So, you finish sculpting your character, but you might notice something. It's incredibly detailed. And while all those details look great, they come at a cost. The mesh you've sculpted is dense with polygons. I'm talking about millions and millions of polygons.
Yes. Oh my god. Even in box modeling, I made this mistake with my first model. I don't have that anymore, unfortunately, but it was so dense because I thought I like had to create every single little. I was trying to be as detailed as possible, and I had to create every single little like polygon, and I just ended up over modeling it. It was just like, yeah, it was just a lot of polys. It was ridiculous. I don't know why I did what I did. I actually decided that as I'm drawing this, I'm gonna do two versions of this. I'm gonna do one with the shirt and one without the shirt, or the jacket rather. Kind of like what I did with the Raven drawing. Anyways, back to the video.
This can make your model hard or completely impossible to animate to use in real-time environments like video games. This is where a technique called retopology comes in. Retopology is the process of simplifying and reordering.
So that's the other thing too, is like when you sculpt, yeah, you are gonna have a shit ton of polys, regardless, because it's just the more polys you have, the more refined you're able to get your models. But yeah, then you do run the problem of having so many polys that it's next to impossible to move and to animate later on when you get to that point, if you're actually trying to, even if you're just trying to like pose it, you know, for like a render or something like that. Yeah, you definitely want to do retopology, and then that's going to be the model that you use to rig and pose and everything like that. Rigging would be as I'm putting the bones in the character.
Organizing the geometry of your sculpt into a more optimized, animation-friendly model. In other words, you're creating the mesh with fewer, well-placed polygons that follow the natural contours of your character. This new mesh is cleaner and much more efficient. But you're probably wondering, hey, stylization, why is this necessary? Imagine trying to animate a character that has millions of tiny, dense polygons. It would be a nightmare for your computer to handle, and your game.
That too. That right there. See, it's basically, I'm kind of getting ahead of him a lot, and I apologize. Um, but I just know exactly where as soon as he starts on a thing, I was like, yeah, I know exactly where he's going with this. But yeah, that's literally, it's literally it right there.
Game or animation would likely run very slowly, if at all. Retopology reduces the polygon count while maintaining the overall shape of your character, making it ready for animation, rigging, and texturing. Now there's 3 key concepts in retopology I want to talk about. The first one is called edge flow. This refers to how the edges of your polygons follow the natural lines of your model. A good edge flow allows your character to deform correctly when animated, especially around joints like the shoulders, elbows, and knees. The second key concept is your polygon budget. When retopologizing, you'll be working to reduce the number of polygons, keeping as few as possible while still retaining the details of your model. When retopologizing, you generally want to work with quads, which are 4-sided polygons instead of triangles. Quads deform better during animation and make a future technique, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, much easier later on. Now, this process may seem technical, but let's simplify it into a step-by-step process that's a little more approachable. When you retopologize, focus on key areas that will move or bend, like the shoulders, elbows, and the face. These areas are going to need more careful attention to edge flow. The rest of the body, like the torso, can have larger...
Yeah, that's just so it can bend and stuff easier. The more polys that are in one little area. So we definitely want to do exactly what he's saying.
Simpler polygons. Once your new mesh is created, you can test it in different poses or with basic animations to see how well it deforms. If you see pinching or weird stretching, it might mean the edge flow needs to be adjusted. I know a lot of people complain about retopology and say it's a hassle, but I actually find it quite relaxing. Retopology may seem like an extra step, but it's essential to turning your beautiful sculpt into a functional, usable model that won't slow down your projects.
So I will say that for at least Blender, I can't really say, I can't speak for like Maya or 3ds Max or anything like that. Excuse me. But for Blender, since it's open source, it has add-ons, and there are retopology add-ons available in the Blender marketplace. The one I use is Retopolpo, I think it's what it's called. It's a cheaper one. There's a more expensive one as well. I think it's so the one I use is like $10. There's another one that's like $90 or something like that. And yeah, so the cool thing about those is that it makes it a whole lot easier to do retopology, because you're essentially just you're just like dragging the mouse across, and then it creates the polys right exactly where it needs to be. And it makes it a whole lot easier than trying to do it by yourself. Trying to do it by hand. So I would definitely say that if for all those who are watching this and trying to be 3ds artists, whatever, trying to do this, I would say definitely look into getting one of those. It makes it so much fucking easier. But if you want the experience or the skill, then yeah, maybe not use that right away. Maybe try and do it by hand, just so you understand the process and that you can do it. But then yeah, definitely I would suggest make it easier on yourself. Just use the retopology add-ons for sure. Anyways,
for a more detailed character, you can't just hop straight into texturing. There's a critical step that we need to take, called UV unwrapping. So, what are UVs and why are they necessary? Your character is fully sculpted and retopologized, but to apply your textures correctly, you need to unwrap your 3D model into a 2D map. This is what UV unwrapping does. I want you to think of it like peeling the skin off of an orange. The orange is your 3D character, and the unwrapped skin is your 2D template. UVs guide your textures, telling the software where every pixel of your texture should go on the model. Without UVs, textures would look distorted and stretched. UV unwrapping ensures textures fit correctly across the surface. While this sounds daunting, it becomes much easier once you understand the basics. Here's how it works. The first step in UV unwrapping is placing something called seams on your models. These seams act like cuts in your orange peel, telling the software where to split your 3D model to create a flat UV map. The trick is to hide seams in less noticeable areas, like the inner thighs or behind the ears. Once you've set your seams, the software...
I will say another thing to really, I guess, compare it to would be like taking a box. I don't know if you guys ever used a box that like you get that's like unfolded and you have to fold it up. It's like that. That's essentially what like an unwrap is. This is the more complicated one, obviously, for like a character. So you're gonna have this whole really weird looking, but and then things are also kind of. He's probably gonna explain this more, but also the other pieces are kind of separated out, so everything's all flattened, and some things don't need to be connected. So that's why everything's all kind of separated out.
Where we'll flatten your 3D model into a 2D map. This is where your model looks a bit like a puzzle or a paper cutout. You'll arrange these islands efficiently so that every part of your model gets a good amount of texture resolution. Once your UVs are laid out, you'll apply a test texture, like a checkerboard pattern, to see how evenly your UVs are laid out. If you see any warping or stretching, you can adjust the UVs to make sure the texture is uniform across the model. With retopology and UV unwrapping, it can be a pretty tedious process, but I highly recommend just taking your time and having fun with it. Okay, so you've unwrapped your character. You could jump straight into texturing. But before you do, I want you to be aware of a process called baking and why it's worth considering learning. Baking is the process of transferring all the fine details from your high poly sculpt into your low poly model. It allows you to keep your model optimized for performance without losing the detailed features you've worked hard on, such as wrinkles, pores, and surface textures. When you bake, you end up creating something called texture maps, like normal maps or ambient occlusion maps, that mimic the high poly detail on your low poly mesh. This way, by applying these textures onto your low poly model, your character still looks intricate and realistic, but remains light enough to use in real-time applications. The good news is that there's software like Substance Painter that simplifies the baking process, making it really quick.
Yes, this is what I was talking about. Why I love Substance Painter. It's so good for texturing. So my process is that after I'm done with all the modeling and the sculpt and everything and all the details and whatnot, and I get to the and then unwrap it and everything, and I get to the texturing part, I export it out from Blender into Substance Painter, and I go from there to do all the sculpting. And the cool thing with that, rather the texture, and the cool thing with that is that I can get even finer details than what I could have with the sculpted. You can get like the texture of like the hair, the texture of the skin, the texture of the clothes that they're wearing, things like that. So that's the really nice thing about Substance Painter. They even have like ready to go stuff too. So if you just need like a simple fabric material, or if you need a I don't know, like a plastic material or something, they already have that ready to go, and you can just slap it onto the parts of the texture you need, ready to go. And then also it does he may or not explain this, but the cool thing about Substance Painter is that it has PBR, which is realistic lighting. Essentially it's just realistic lighting texturing. So it automatically bakes this realistic lighting into the texture, and so you don't need to that's something you don't need to do separate or anything. It's already baked into the texture and it's ready to go. It's really nice. It looks really realistic. I don't know how industry standard Substance Painter is. I do know that a lot of people like to use it. It's the same as Blender. But yeah, I would definitely say to use this too as well. You have to pay for it, and because it's Adobe, it doesn't cost too much. I spend like $20 a month on this, so.
Quick and beginner friendly. So while you can go straight to texturing, learning how to bake, especially with
when I use it, because right now it's like I'm on and off using 3D models. So right now I don't think I'm paying for it because I'm not doing any 3D models as of right now, but I will be soon, so I'll have to start paying for it again.
tools like Substance Painter will elevate your work, especially when creating game-ready assets. Now that your model is unwrapped and ready, it's time to dive into texturing. This is where you'll give your stylized character personality through skin, clothing, and other materials. It might sound a little complex, but don't worry, I'm going to break it down into simple steps, and you'll see that it's a lot easier than it seems. So when it comes to texturing your character, two popular tools are Substance Painter and Blender. Substance Painter works more like Photoshop, using a layering system that lets you paint directly onto your 3D models in real time. Blender, on the other hand, uses a node-based system, which gives you creative control control over your materials. While it may take a little time to get used to, it's a really powerful tool for achieving your desired styles. Now that you know a little bit about maps, here's a simple way to think about the texturing process. Number 1, start with the base color. Choose the main colors for your character's skin and clothing. Number 2, add normal details. Now, if you've already baked your character like we talked about earlier, you're going to have a normal map from that. If you didn't, you can create a new normal map and add some details like skin pores, fabric patterns, and anything else you can think of to make your character look more interesting without overwhelming the stylized design. Step 3 is to adjust your roughness. Decide how shiny or matte each part of your character should be. Skin will typically be smoother, while clothing might be a little more textured. And step 4 is to incorporate other maps. If needed, you can add metallic maps and height maps for accessories and extra detail. I have some tips for success when it comes to texturing. The first one is to preview often. If you're texturing in Substance Painter and you know that your character is going to go into Unreal Engine eventually, I would recommend importing your character early and seeing how the colors change when you switch over engines. Sometimes it's going to be a little different than you think. So instead of texturing your character all the way through and then switching to Unreal and realizing that it doesn't look the way you realized, make sure you import your character early so you can see how your textures are going to actually look. The next tip is experiment. Don't be afraid to try different textures and colors. Texturing is a creative process and there's no one right way to do it. Some of the coolest textures that I've ever made came from pure experimentation. And my third tip is to learn and explore. We have a ton of online tutorials and breakdowns on Stylized Station, our YouTube channel. And we have other courses on texturing that are gonna help you develop your skills. And there you go. That's all I can think about right now when it comes to creating a character. Now, it's not so scary when you get everything broken down like that, is it? But there's so much more, like the intricate technology behind rigging and animation and all the exciting stuff that comes with that. This guide has given you a pretty comprehensive look into what it takes to create your first character. If that's all you wanted to know, then I will see you next time. However, if you're eager to learn more, I highly recommend you check out our brand new course, The Character Artist Handbook. With over 15 hours of engaging content, you're gonna be well on your way to creating your first character. Okay, self-promotion over, I swear. Thank you so much for watching, and I can't wait to see what you create. I will see you on the next episode of Stylized Station.
All right, definitely go check that video out. It's a really good video. Yeah, everything he hit everything basically on the. It's a good overview of the process here. At least as of currently, this is basically what everyone's doing nowadays. Like I said, when I first started, people were mostly just doing like box modeling. So for sure, this is a lot better of a way of doing characters and stuff for 3D modeling. So yeah, good video. I am going to close this out. If you like this, by the way, this whole kind of drawing and reacting to like a video, definitely let me know in the future. This is something new I wanted to try out today because I did kind of see this and it popped in my head. Maybe I could do this kind of react video while I draw. Yeah, definitely let me know if you like that. But